that. Okay, so let's start the meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals for the Village of Southampton, Tuesday, December 8th, 2020. And I think we need to approve the meetings from the last public Village Board meeting dated Thursday, November 19th. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Susan, did you approve?
No. No,
Not a no on the minutes?
that's correct. That's correct.
Okay.
Not wrong.
Do we need to make a correction to the minutes for your approval?
I think there's too much. It's not the fault of the recording secretary, but I feel that it misrepresents what people say, and I think it should be a simpler format, so I'm not approving it.
David, you and I talked about that a little bit. Should we move to a simpler format in the future?
It's up to the board. If you want to change the way it's being done, that's your decision to do.
Well, David,
I find that the summaries are helpful to both applicants and board members, but if the board finds otherwise or would like some changes made to how it's done, we need to have that discussion so that this doesn't continue to occur, that minutes aren't adopted.
Why do we have to change it? There's nothing wrong with the minutes as written. They're very, you go over, you see what you said, you see what somebody else said, and that's it.
They're not intended to be a transcript of what occurred. If applicants or council would like that, they would get the minutes transcribed, the video transcribed.
May I add something here? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
yes.
Okay. There's a transcript of every Zoom meeting that I save in an archive. So if you ever need it, I just print it up. If that helps you, that's all I need to say.
And I'm fine with the way it's been going.
Are you saying that there's a written transcript, or are you saying there's a video transcript?
Zoom makes a typewritten transcript, and I have been saving them in a file. It's word for word back and forth, and it puts the name of the person right in front of it. So if you feel like simplifying something, you probably can, but that's not for me to say. I just thought I'd add that.
Right. Those transcripts were required by the executive order that authorized everybody to do Zoom. One of the conditions of that is that the transcripts be made of the meetings.
But once the Zoom stops, they're going to stop. So then you're back to your regular minutes.
True. So true.
Correct.
Susan, do you have specific feedback that would be helpful to what the concern is? Because the format doesn't feel any different than it's been. And I'm just wondering.
Different, but in my experience with the ARB and now the ZBA, I feel that, for instance, I am somewhat misrepresented, and I don't want to spend my life rewriting the minutes. It's not my job.
How are you misrepresented?
I don't feel that I feel that there is that the information is tainted in certain ways. It's swayed, that there's a huge amount when a lawyer goes on, and then the people on the board get one line as if they don't exist. And I just feel it isn't representative of of the board.
It's a summary, that's all. It's not supposed
It's a summary, but it's someone's opinion of the summary, and I don't agree with it often. And I used to rewrite parts of it, but I'm not interested in doing that, and I don't think that should be anyone's job. So I don't go along. And I know from training, municipal training, that recording secretaries are there to record the vote and who is actually participating. That is the law. The summary part is not the law, nor is approving the minutes.
Okay, for the time being, why don't we'll continue discussing this, but for the time being, can we vote to approve the Thursday, November 19th meeting minutes? And Susan, you'll vote nay, but will there be 4 votes in favor of approving them?
Aye.
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 Nay.
Aye. Okay, now we have 5 decisions to go through. The first being 950 Meadow Lane, case number 3076. And I think this was the case where we were adding some conditions to the decision to assure the neighbor that perimeter planting would be in place and viable. A bond would be implemented, as well as a condition for issuance of the certificate of occupancy. And Chick, do you want to speak to this?
Yes, this has been discussed at a number of meetings. This is the one with the existing tennis court, the proposed new home. I know you're all familiar with it. And the neighbor to the east had expressed some concern. That area is outside the wetland jurisdiction area. We do have a plan that depicts all of the improvements. I don't think there are any outstanding questions, except as you indicate, Mark. There was a request of the ZBA for a bond. We would propose a a fairly substantial bond. It's a very large improvement project. And I'll defer to David just in terms of things that are outside of wetland jurisdiction, but we will reference the plans that have been submitted in the wetland jurisdiction permit, if you direct me to prepare that permit for the next meeting, which would be next Thursday. But I had no outstanding questions. I don't think there are any outstanding questions with regard to the wetland permit jurisdiction area.
David, do you need any input from us with respect to the size of the bond or any other terms or conditions to the approval?
That's a question for Chick, the bond, what he feels necessary.
Be happy to hear input. In the past, we've done bonds anywhere from $10,000 to $30,000. They have not been more than that, but we certainly can discuss it. I would have proposed.
It's a large project. I would go with a $30,000 bond.
That was going to be my proposal. Yes, Dan.
So is it our jurisdiction? This is the landscaping and the one lawyer keeps saying, well, we're just doing this. We're not required to do this kind of thing. And I don't understand where that's coming from. What are the conditions under which we're acting? I understand the wetlands part. This is just added on as under our jurisdiction to require these.
Yes.
And the applicant has agreed to them as well, from my understanding.
I think the applicant actually made the offer.
Yeah, that's not my question. I'm just wondering what we're doing in it. David?
Well, they offered it as a condition for their approval.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yes.
But why does the lawyer keep saying, well, we're doing this to not humor, but to.
Because that side of the property is
Close.
this vegetation is outside of the wetlands jurisdiction.
Right, I got that. But my
Right.
question is, why are we being involved in it? Just because the applicant offered?
Yes, and because they're offering it as a condition to the board granting the wetlands approval.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have a vote on this? Dan, do you want to weigh in? Where would you vote?
Oh, I thought we were ready to vote on this like 3 months ago. This was the back and forth between the two neighbors. Were tit-and-tatting it back and forth about this screening on the property, so I'm ready to vote on it.
Are you in favor?
Yes.
Okay. Kevin
In favor of it.
and Julia
I'm in favor as well.
and Susan?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm in favor as well. So that's unanimous. And David, if you need anything else from us, let us know. Do you?
This is Chick's decision.
Okay.
Yes,
But do
in
you,
this
as far
case,
as the conditions go, who's writing the conditions? Chick, you are?
I will prepare them. It'll reflect the most recent plans, the standard village conditions, and I would be able to have that decision ready for you for the meeting next week and in advance of the meeting next week, so you have a chance to look at it.
By Tuesday at noon.
Thank you.
Chick, by Tuesday at noon?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. So the next decision is case number 3081, 199 Cooper's Lane. This was a request for a tennis court in the front yard setback 35 feet from the property line where 90 feet is required. Are we ready to vote on that?
I am.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes,
Dan, where are you voting on this? In favor or against?
I'm going to vote against this.
And Kevin?
I'm voting against it.
Okay, Julia
I'm voting against it.
and Susan?
me too.
So that's unanimous against granting of a 35-foot front yard variance for a tennis court.
And is there additional justification that you feel that you'd like to put on the record that you didn't state previously during the other work sessions or public meetings? I know this has been pretty thoroughly discussed by the board and their opposition to it, but just if there was anything specific from any of the board members that might assist in my drafting of the resolution.
It's a large lot. There must be some other place to have a tennis court rather than 35 feet from a road.
I thought that, you know, the neighborhood really doesn't have any front yard tennis courts, nor should they. And there wasn't really a good argument for this that I could, it's worse for the neighborhood and adjoining properties. And I think has a real impact on them.
Their argument was, I want it because I want it. You know?
Well,
Yeah.
actually,
I think it was, I think it was also bad planning. I mean, they do this whole project, they had things all over the place. They should have just addressed this right from the very beginning instead of coming to us right at the very end and say, oh, by the way, we want you to give us this tennis court.
well, they went through a huge process with the ARB when I was the chair, and there was never a mention of wanting a tennis court. So
That's what I'm saying. You know, it
Yeah,
should have been addressed from the
Dan.
beginning.
So it wasn't, you know, they had planned everything out meticulously and listened to feedback from the ARB. So something changed and then they wanted us to, you know, help them out. But I don't think it's good for anybody, except maybe for them.
David, the one point I'd also emphasize is that it's a substantial variance, 35 feet where 90 is required. I mean, it's just, you know.
And it's also a corner lot, so it's also like almost on 2 front yards.
It is.
Is
Right,
that
great.
enough,
Thank you.
David?
Yes, that's very good.
Okay, so moving on to case number 3083, Donna Zilka, 28 Raymond's Lane. Are we ready to vote on that? And Susan, do you want to weigh in on that first?
I think it's perfectly okay. I'm not big on a lot of relief, but I think in the circumstances and the fact that there was no road when the original house was built behind it, it's not that big an ask.
Yeah, this is a rear yard setback of 43 feet where 60 is required. Julie, are you in favor as well?
I am in favor as well.
And Kevin?
I'm in favor of it.
Dan?
I am in favor of it.
So that's unanimous. We have 5 votes in favor of granting the variance to case number 3083, Donna Zilka, 28 Raymond's Lane. David, do you need anything more from us?
No, I think you guys have put a pretty good record together on this one, why everybody's in favor of it, and that's fine. We'll have a decision for Tuesday as well on this one.
Okay, so moving on to case number 3087, 71 Walnut Street. This is actually a request for 4 variances. And Susan, do you want to start and weigh in on this? I guess we're ready to vote. They've closed the meeting.
Yes, I think I would be willing to accept the extension of the house and the building out of the front step, the cover for this front step. I am not in favor of the, whatever they're calling it, hot tub or the garage. I think that for setting a precedent of putting a pool, whatever kind, in the front yard.
Pool.
Well,
A
it's
spa.
whatever.
That's-
No, I just am not in favor of it. I think there's too much on the lot then. It's too many variances and it sets a precedent that I don't want to have to deal with down the road, which will be happening for sure. It just isn't appropriate. And there was a reason why it was denied before.
Well, they've modified it since the original proposal to a great extent. I was against it at first, now I'm in favor of it.
I don't find their argument about the hot tub all that convincing, like to put it out in the middle of the yard.
Where do you want to put it, in the house?
I don't want to argue with you, Kevin. You could put it right by the house and you wouldn't have to make it permanent and they would solve their problem. And lots of people have.
So Kevin, you're in favor of all 4 variances?
Yes,
Okay, and Susan, you're in favor of the
Variances
variances
that
with
have
respect
to
the
do with the
house?
main building.
Okay. I agree with Susan for the reason that 4 variances for a front yard setback just to me gets cumulatively too much. I think I mentioned that at the last meeting. So we asked the applicant if you know they themselves would limit the number of variances and the substantial nature of the variances, but they didn't do it. So I think we're in a position where we need to do it. So I would agree with Susan that the variances with respect to the house to me are you know beneficial to the applicant and not particularly detrimental to the neighborhood, but when you add the garage, storage, and bathroom plus the spa, I think that's over the line. So I'm agreeing with Susan that I would agree to 2 variances that apply to the house, but deny the variances with respect to the spa and the garage, bathroom, storage area.
I think they might have taken out the bathroom.
I think they took out the
That
shower.
doesn't matter to me.
They took the,
Yeah,
they
the
took
bathroom is
shower
still
out. There
there.
was still a toilet.
Okay.
Yeah, the size of that structure just seems larger than necessary and on balance for a front yard setback. On balance, a garage, you know, I was on the fence about, but when you add the storage area and the bathroom, that's where it accomplished the denial for me. And Julia, do you want to weigh in?
Would it be all right if Dan weighed in first, if you're willing, Dan?
Sure.
Sure, I'll weigh in first. This was originally a 2-family house, correct?
It is
Yes.
a 2-family house now. They're proposing to make it a 1-family.
And so I'm in favor, if they're giving up a 2-family house, I'm in favor of the variances, all 4 of them.
Well, I've done it to myself because I asked to go last.
You didn't
I,
do Julia.
I'm afraid that I am not in favor of the garage home. And for me, taking out the shower was not sufficient, particularly when there was a door from the storage room to the toilet area. There were 2 entrances to it. So it just, that's one. I'm going to say no to the pool and yes to the vestibule in the entryway to the house and to the extension in the back. I understand wanting and needing those pieces.
Can you write it that way, David?
Yes, I can.
Do you need anything more from us?
No, I think we're pretty good on this one also. I think you guys have done a good job articulating, the balancing test. And I can properly write that up with, looks like it will be 3-2 denying the pool, the spa and the garage, and all in favor of the relief for the principal residence addition and vestibule.
Yes.
That sounds right.
And then Kevin, can you take over? I'm recused from case number 3088, 1431 Meadow Lane.
What was that?
Can you take over on case number 3088?
Yeah. This is the walkway out to the Dug Lagoon.
Yes.
Everybody knows which one this is, and we have a decision already written by Chick in the emails today. Is that right, Chick?
Yes, yeah, we had a couple of minor questions. There was never too much discussion on this. It always seemed pretty straightforward. They're using through-flow decking. It's a minor structure. It channelizes the access to the Dug Lagoon rather than trampling the wetlands. You had asked me to prepare a decision at the October meeting. We had minor discussion in November, and I drafted the decision for your consideration, whether it be today or at the meeting next week.
So we can vote on that next week, right?
That would be the,
I think that's the rules, isn't it?
Yeah, we have to vote next week. We can't vote today. We just say how we're going to vote, but we don't actually vote. I'm in favor of it.
that draft. It has all the conditions. It references the appropriate plans, and happy to hear any comments. Otherwise, it should be ready.
How about the rest of the board?
I'm in favor of it.
How about you, Julia?
I'm in favor.
Dan?
I'm in favor.
I'm in favor.
Very good. Thank you. You'll have that for next week.
So those are all the pending decisions. We can move on to the cases. The first one is case number 3. Let me get my number right.
3079.
Yeah, it's the South Main case. What's our number on that?
3079.
3079. So we should continue our deliberations. Mandated by state law. There are five considerations detailed in the state law that we should discuss it at this meeting or continue to discuss at this meeting. Just for clarification, David, we need to distill one issue. Are the lots merged? Can you advise the board on that question? David?
It's the position of the building department that they are by the code of the village that they are merged. That's consistent with their prior interpretations on lots of this nature that are come into similar ownership.
Okay, so then what we have before the board is a question as to whether we would grant an area variance to in connection with a future subdivision, whether or not we would allow these lots to be 2 acres rather than the current zoning of 3 acres. Is that the right question?
Correct.
Okay. One of the, I'm sorry.
For my math, the substantial part is that 2 acres requires a 33% which I feel is substantial amount of relief for each of the 2-acre lots in a 3-acre zone.
Yeah, David, that's one of the tests or one of the criteria that we're supposed to consider is whether the requested area variance is substantial.
Correct. That's one of the factors in considering and reaching the determination of whether or not it's more beneficial to the applicant versus detrimental to the neighborhood.
Well, if you do the other math, a 4-acre zone, if the lots are combined and it's 4 acres, that's only 25% more. So if you want to balance 33% versus 25%, I don't know if that makes any sense, but it does to me. And I wouldn't say that it's a negative to have a bigger lot, especially in this area. I'd like to add that it's never been mentioned, but I went to the building department and picked up the pamphlet about what this area is. And it is the main historic district of the village. Both these plots are in that area. I'm not saying that the buildings are historic, but they're in a part of the village that was created in 1989 in order and is on the National Register. It's an important part of the character of the village.
Okay, Mark, my feelings are that historically these were 2 lots, and the houses were there before all these zoning changes and everything took place. So historically, there were 2 lots there. They got merged. Now, if we make 1 lot, we've got 2 residences on 1 lot, which is a non-conforming. I'm going with the history of it, and I looked at it on Google Earth. I wanted to get a good picture of both sides of the street up and down, and they're just a convoluted mixture of lot sizes. So I don't see any detrimental of it being 2 2-acre lots or 1 4-acre parcel.
It's the density of use, not just the land.
There's no density difference between what's there now.
No, there would be. There would be.
Yeah, but I can't speak to the future.
Well,
let me
I'm
just
willing to do it.
clarify something with David as our counsel, because one thing that you mentioned, which is important to our consideration, Dan, is you said that the lots got merged. The lots were merged by an affirmative act of the applicant, which is different from many of the other cases. The 1983 upzoning was in place, and the applicant was aware of the 1983 upzoning when they chose to transfer both non-conforming lots into common ownership. And that's how the lots were merged. It was a case where the applicant affirmatively chose to put 2 non-conforming lots into common ownership. They created the merger.
Yeah, I understand that, but I'm still stuck with two residences on 1 lot.
After they created the merger, I do believe they continued to use both of these properties, you know, in a common way. They had 1 pool, you know, where 1 house traveled over a pathway from their property to the pool. But I don't think that the issue is not so much that the lots were historically 2 separate lots. We can all agree that historically there were 2 separate lots. But I think we also should recognize that the applicant was aware of or should have been aware of the upzoning at the time that they chose to put these 2 lots into common ownership.
We have no proof that they were aware.
Well, I mean, everybody needs to be aware of you know, the law, the zoning law. I mean, if you buy a property, you know, and then want to put in a tennis court, you can't say, I didn't know I wasn't allowed to put in a tennis court. I mean,
think they may have put their faith in their own attorney.
That's a legal act.
Attorney, they use someone from the city.
Okay, but my point in all of this is that and David, I'd like you to just help us with fulfilling our obligation to deliberate the criterion that state law requires us to deliberate. And number 5 is whether the alleged difficulty was self-created. It's not a dispositive consideration, but it is one of 5 considerations in the law. David, my question for you is, if they affirmatively transferred 2 non-conforming lots into common ownership, is that what the state law regards as a self-created difficulty?
If they did, I believe it would be. I think as Kevin and Dan saying there's no affirmative showing that they intended to merge them. I know you're saying that the law is what that merger occurs, but that is even if they intended for them to merge, the request that they're making is on the balancing test, and that determination about whether or not it was self-created is only one aspect of that balancing test. So yes, I see your point that they intended to merge these together, bought them either ignorantly of the law or otherwise. That is a consideration in the balancing test. That is not a be-all, end-all to the requested relief.
But David, I thought that the applicant
Okay, no, it's one of
materials say they created a trust or did something and put the lots together. It wasn't like it just happened out of nowhere. Does that?
It was purchased and put into the same name and then subsequently transferred into a different trust from the same names already. So
Okay.
it was continued to a different common owner than what it was when it was purchased in common ownership.
I don't understand. Okay, but in both those cases, these were, it didn't just happen. It was done on purpose, right?
It was purchased in the same name. I assume the names they used were purposefully chosen. And then it was subsequently transferred to another
Entity.
trust. Again, assuming that that's an intentional transfer, they did a deed and document. What I'm saying is that 5th standard is a factor to consider, and is not something it's not dispositive just because it was done and they should have known about the law.
Well, I'm not sure that they cared about, I mean, we're assuming that was considered detrimental when it wasn't until they were dead and now the estate wants more money, right?
I mean, I don't believe there's anything in the record either way as to whether or not they intended it to be merged or didn't intend it to be merged.
What is a legal merger? I mean,
yeah, David, I'm not sure intent, I mean, they did affirmatively transfer 2 non-conforming lots into common ownership. I don't think we're supposed to, analyze psychologically what their quote unquote intent was. I mean, they did take an affirmative act, but like you said, it's one of several and not a dispositive consideration. I just wanted to give it some consideration. I mean, I do think we have to look at the neighborhood.
I have a question for David.
Mhm.
Yes.
David, do we have any case history of similar type cases like this in the village and how they were handled?
What similarity?
In other words, where two pieces were co-joined and were separated, or were we allowed it or not allowed it? And case history, have we run it? How many times did we run into this? You happen to know?
The case history from what I've seen including the material submitted by the applicant, they were ones predominantly that were in the same ownership at the time of upzoning.
Mhm.
Not that were subsequently done, but there are also ones that were subdivided that hadn't been merged, that a subdivision was, lot area variances were granted.
Well, then let's talk a little bit about the specific neighborhood, because that's something that Susan started to talk about, which is, you know, we all know this village intimately. I mean, I do think that the corner of South Main and Gin Lane, you know, has a certain, you know, greater gravitas and importance to the village as a whole than almost any other part of the village. It's the corner of South Main and Historic Street and Gin Lane, you know, which is, you know, of course, famous. So I do think we have to look at this particular neighborhood a little bit more closely, you know, when it comes to allowing for an area variance that would pave the way for 2 lots rather than 1, and all that accompanies the ability to develop 2 lots rather than 1. So I do think we have to take note of the particularly special location of this particular request.
I'd like to point out once more that case on Little Plains and Gin Lane, very similar, except there's only one house. The pool actually straddled the line, and we gave them a variance to divide that. And furthermore, I think if this goes to court, we're gonna lose. If we deny this and it goes to court, we're gonna lose.
Well, I don't think that should be what we just use for our consideration. I think we should
Tony,
decide
it's
what
not
we think is
that
right, not if we're going to get sued. Being threatened is not part of being, you know, a good way of dealing with what the information is.
Nobody has threatened us. I'm just saying,
You're acting like you're being threatened.
I'm not acting like it's being threatened, just saying if it goes to court, I don't know if they would even take it to court. Maybe they will, maybe they won't.
Why don't we just
I think
continue
it should be, I don't care if they're. it's not our-
I have another question for David. David,
Yes.
one of the problems is I think what Mark is saying is that if it's 2 lots and then they'll build 2 new houses, then these are probably 2 houses, 2 pools and 2 tennis courts. Can we put conditions on that where if they do go back to 2 lots that they can't have tennis courts, or can we make conditions?
If the condition is related to the relief, whereas here, that's what it sounds like, you'd be granting the split based on the lack of an ability to have those additional structures that Mark is concerned with, that those conditions, I believe, would be reasonable.
I think they'd be worse than, I think that's kind of handicapping, but I'm happy to. I think it's one, I think it should be 1 lot. It's in a very prominent historic district. It's at the very sort of apex of importance in terms of that district. I think, you know, somewhere along the line, which is nobody who knows, there are 2, as far as I'm concerned, 2 houses on this property. And, you know, that's not our problem either, in a sense. I think dealing with the, you know, there's something called the blue sheet that mentions that this property, the gates and the landscaping, the blue sheet is prepared by the Long Island, the New York State Division of Parks and Recreation, Division of Historic Preservation. I looked this up. The house itself doesn't, it may have been, the house may have been built in the 20s, which would make it considered as historic under the ARB, but it's been dickered with enough that historic consultants seem to think it doesn't really qualify. But the land and the gates are mentioned and are on this sheet that the village looks to in terms of the historic nature, preserving the historic nature of the village. They didn't write it, SPLIA did, the state did. So the idea that then you're gonna go in there and bulldoze everything down, there is a demo application in the ARB. Mark and I are not making this up, it's in there. I think all applications, if there are other applications for the same property in front of the, that we should have known about that. I know about it, but I asked, but we shouldn't be guessing around like this. That's a very pertinent, so we are talking about increased density of use if we just let them have the two lots.
Well, that's what I wanted us to all address is one of the standards that we're supposed to consider the detriment to nearby properties and whether there would be any undesirable change produced in the character of the neighborhood if we granted area variances in this case. So why don't we address that? And I mean, Dan, do you think there would be any detriment to nearby properties if this was 2 lots with 2 houses, 2 tennis courts, 2 swimming pools, 2 pool houses, instead of 1 house, 1 pool, 1 tennis court? Do you see the possibility that that would be an undesirable change or a detriment to nearby properties?
Well, what I see right now is I see there's 2 houses there's 2 houses there now with 1 swimming pool. So I can see it being 2 lots, but I put a condition on it. They would not be able to have tennis courts, and whoever's going to build a house there or 2 houses there, depending on however this case turns out, they're going to be houses that are a benefit, architecturally, I think, to the area. They're not going to, they use that expression McMansion. These aren't going to be McMansions. These are going to be, like you said, it's a high-end, important corner, and whatever's done there, either 1 new house or two houses with restrictions, are going to be done properly and fit in with the neighborhood.
Honestly, I don't think you can know that. Having been on the ARB for like 4 years, you can't know that.
Julia, can you weigh in a little bit on
Yeah, I've been actually I've been actually appreciating the chance to listen as much as I have. I guess I do have a few things to say. One is that if the property is split and it's in 2 ownership, I agree with Dan that there would be 2 houses, but it's 2 houses with 2 sets of tradespeople, 2 sets of homeowners, 2 sets of guests. So in fact, how intensely used that property, those 2 properties would be altered. That's one piece. The other is I'm sensitive to all this conversation that we've had now for what feels like months about upzoning. And I know for myself, the fact that the upzoning's intentions were actualized through this property, through these decisions that were made to merge the property, I would not want to unmerge them at this time. I think that those were thoughtful decisions. And then finally, and I'm not entirely sure that this is in our purview to be considering, but one of the benefits of, I think, Susan, you've described it as the historic beach neighborhood, is that all these properties that are around Lake Agawam are also now heavily trafficked for pedestrian use, but they are homes with these are roads that don't have shoulders of any kind. So right now cars are accommodating the larger numbers of people by the month who are walking around from Main Street to Gin Lane to First Neck down Pond Lane. And I believe that that's only going to increase with time, and the adding more neighbors, adding more trades, adding more does not seem, I don't think that the outcome for the neighborhood, and I'm very aware of how many neighbors have said that they don't think that this bothers them, but I am concerned about the village as a whole. So those are all my thoughts about it. But I do appreciate the different perspectives. But I do know that when you have two neighbors as opposed to one family, that the car volume is going to at least double. So where I would come out on
That
it
was a
is that
good
I
point
don't
about the
believe that it's in the
service.
best interest.
Aren't there two houses there now?
Yeah, but two houses that are being
Aren't
serviced
there
by
two
one
houses there now
contract
used by two
is
families?
one pool man. It's one, as opposed to as soon as there's a property line, it's everybody's got their own people. And the numbers just, they go up just exponentially.
That's true.
A family lived there.
Right. Right. So if for all those reasons, which are a plenitude of them, and I've been listening, I hope thoughtfully over the last few months about this, I would not be in favor of splitting them again. But for a whole bunch of different reasons.
And it also, it does bother me that you had upzoning at a time when the trustees could see how many non-conforming lots there might have been, you know, in the area that they were upzoning, but they chose to upzone as well. And I do not want to be in a position where I'm undermining, you know, the intentions of the trustees in passing their upzoning. And that's what I feel like we'd be doing. But again, I think it's important for us to go through all of the criterion that the state law, you know, sets out. You know, one of them, of course, is to discuss, you know, the detriment to nearby properties and what change would result in the character of the neighborhood if this became two lots that could be developed to their full potential.
Well,
I do have one last anecdotal thing to say,
Okay.
which is that I do not believe that the prior owner made any mistake. I believe that they were being a good neighbor. I believe that they were being a good village resident. And I believe that they very thoughtfully merged these properties. I don't believe any of the conjecture that there were any mistakes being made here. I don't. These were far too thoughtful homeowners for that.
David, it appears that, you know, the vote's going to be that the lots do not get merged. In that case, then what are the chances that the owners of this property will take this to court?
I really can't say. You know, it's.
I'm just going to say because we're going to.
I would expect them to.
The advocate at the last meeting promised us.
I would expect them to.
So I guess it would be very important how you write your decision.
Well, that's why I know Mark is cited to the upzoning and the code, and while yes, I think that that's relevant, every variance this board is being asked for is for a code provision that was adopted by the trustees at some point. So I hear his point, that where it's going against what the trustees have adopted specifically. However, none of the village law standards take that into consideration. The balancing test is benefit to the applicant versus detriment to the neighborhood, including undesirable change. And if you can articulate those as best you can for me to write the determination, that's what I'm asking for. What is the detriment that you see to the neighborhood versus the benefit weighed against the benefit to the applicant? So I can properly write the determination.
And you don't think we've told you that in the last 5 minutes?
No.
I've heard it from Mark. I'd like it clearer.
If we grant this, all we're doing is taking a line and erasing a line. or we're creating a line, excuse me, not, we're putting in a new line between these two lots. Nothing changes in the neighborhood. Everything's.
Kevin, let me ask you this question. The homeowner to the north of this property, the person who's, you know, arguably most affected as a neighbor, you know, by the change in this neighborhood. He has a lot that is the same size as the combined size of this lot. What would you do if he came in after reading this, or a purchaser for his property came in and said, I'd like to subdivide my lot as well. You just allowed a subdivision to the south. My property is certainly worth more. What would that do?
He has to go to the planning board for that.
No. First, he's asking for an area variance from this board. He says, I'm on my way to the.
I would say no.
Why? But
Not the
how
same.
would you say no to him when you said yes here?
Because on this one, we would be creating a non-conforming, and the neighbor's lot, we wouldn't be. This has 2 residents on it now. So, you know, one of the arguments for denying it is density, and it would be, you know, more swimming pools, more tennis courts, more construction going on, a little more traffic. But is that a detriment to the community? That's going to happen if they build one house on that property. There'll be more construction, more traffic. It'll be a bigger house. So I don't know if the weight is there. You know, to say that you know, that there is a negative impact. That's why I can't get my head around.
Well, to me, it's a negative impact because it doubles the amount of activity. You can't just say one house. Julia's right. The garbage, the pool guy, everything. And
Yeah,
you can't, and the houses are going to be big.
That's normal.
No, that's
Wear and
normal.
tear up and down the whole street.
That's normal for a 3-acre lot. Why is it times 2? I think that's a detriment to the neighboring properties.
There are 2 houses there now, so that you
They
know,
are
and it's
used
a
as
non-conforming.
they are
That's what
a
I
family
see.
compound.
Dan, I think, Dan, where you were going was that you would approve an area variance here as long as you impose conditions.
Correct.
Okay.
No tennis courts, is what Dan is saying. Right, Dan?
I'm
What's
sorry,
that?
say it again, Kevin?
Saying no tennis courts. That's what Dan is saying.
I'm saying yes. You know, so if you had a house and a garage and a pool, you know, and no tennis courts, because the tennis courts gobble up a lot of impact. You know, so that would be you know, that as one way to compromise your way out of this. You know, so
along with that.
But you know, because one, I'd hate to see it go through all this, then it all goes through courts, and then it comes back to us again. If there's a way to settle this, maybe there's a way. That's what we're looking for. You know.
Right.
So you'd be saying no tennis courts as a condition for the approval.
Yeah, and I looked at Google. None of the houses around there have tennis courts.
The one to the north has a tennis court.
Yeah, but if you look at everything
yeah,
to the south
Right
or
next
to the
door.
west, yeah, I know, but on average, there were hardly any tennis courts, even on the bigger lots.
No, I'm just taking notes and you know, going through the.
Can I just say,
Street, there are plenty of
could I
them.
mention one other thing? I'm aware of the fact that at our last meeting that we were using certain terminology that in legal terms was problematic. We were using the word density, and I think every one of us has used the word density again tonight, but we mean it in terms of a layman's expectation of what density is, which I think intensity is the legal word. Is that correct? I think I'm right about that, because there was a real objection at our last meeting about the word density.
Right.
Yeah, I think what we're talking about is intensity of use, the idea of 2 tennis courts, 2 pools, 2 pool houses, just, I think what the trustees were intending to control or buffer was as much as we could to minimize the intensity of use of these properties.
Right, my mistake. I said density. It should be intensity.
Several of us, and myself included, have said the same thing, but I was smarting from it after our last meeting, so I want to make sure that we didn't get tripped
And
up.
to your point about service vehicles and people coming and going, and the number of people going, living there, and guests and whatever, service.
I mean, we are still talking, just as far as the particular situation here, this is a corner lot.
Hmm.
So, so as you're increasing traffic with respect to a corner lot, it's a little bit more significant. But anyway, David, do you want to just, why don't we just hold this off? We have another public meeting at any rate, and we'll continue to discuss it. And can we move on?
Please.
Does David have any other words of wisdom for us before we move on?
No, I think you're all right. The focus is on the standards, and I think you are articulating your points as to why you feel that's a detriment.
Good.
Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, so the next pending case, I believe this is for you to provide us with guidance, Chick, 66 Meadowmere Lane, case number 3089.
Yes, hi again. We did receive a resubmission from the applicant. You'll recall that this is on the west side of the Mortimer property. It's the ditch that runs south from Meadowmere Place and or Meadowmere Lane. The information that we received so far seems to be responsive to what I requested. I was looking for quite a bit more detail on access, use of equipment, specification of materials to be removed, details on existing vegetation and proposed vegetation, and really more the methodology. Overall, the project, I believe, is good and would be a benefit if we can establish native wetland vegetation as compared to the existing Phragmites and Japanese knotweed. It just has to be done carefully and appropriately. So for the purpose of this meeting, I don't have any further input or questions. I'm continuing to review the applicant's submission, and I will request that the applicant present this to the committee at the next meeting. I'm sorry, to the board at the next meeting.
So we're close to a decision on this?
I think.
Don't they have to get some kind of approval?
Say that again, Susan?
Did they have to get an approval from the county or something for this?
I believe we heard that they needed to coordinate at least with the highway department, with Gary Gillespie, and I believe they did that. I can confirm that. I don't believe there's any other agencies other than DEC. And
Oh, that must be what I thought. Yeah. Did they have to do that before we rule on it or not? That I thought that the one guy who came in sort of intimated that had to happen, but maybe that's not true, Chick.
you just check and see if they sent us a DEC permit. It is possible that they did. Actually, you're right. Jim Walker at one of the meetings said that he was also revising the application to DEC. I have not seen the permit yet. I'll be honest with you, I'd be most comfortable if we hear from the applicant and make a determination at the meeting next Thursday. That will give me additional time to review, ask any further questions, get the status of DEC, and make sure that we're moving forward appropriately. Is that okay?
According to their submission of December 3rd, it says the DEC application is still pending.
Yeah, that's what I recall.
So would our approval be dependent upon their getting the DEC approval? Chick?
We have not in the past made that a condition. There may be something general that says you must get all other appropriate approvals, but we don't condition our approvals on another agency. At least council and input in the past has been that we're a separate permitting body. And our standards for the most part are more restrictive than the DEC. So we have acted as we feel appropriate, this board with my input, but we can certainly discuss that.
I don't know. I'm pretty new to this board and I just didn't understand the protocol in terms of, you know, what you should do. I
Yeah,
don't,
the applicant's responsible to get all appropriate permits before they build. But if this board is comfortable with a project, as I said, we're generally more strict and we have acted separately. And I don't see any issue with that. It's really only in the case of seeker, if that were to apply. This is a type 2 action, but you know, then you can't act until until a seeker determination is issued. But in this case, we would typically act if the board is comfortable.
okay, just asking.
Okay, so can we
I'd like
move on
hear
to,
from the applicant. Go ahead, Mark, sorry.
no, are we complete on this pending the next hearing next Thursday? Are we okay to move on, Chick?
Yeah, that's fine with me. I thought that was for the members. Yes.
So let's go to case number 3085. It's 131 Flying Point Realty LLC. This is, if we all remember, a request for a front yard setback for a dwelling to 59.5 feet where 80 feet is required.
Are there new documents submitted? So what are we doing?
Anything new has been submitted.
So it was just left, right?
Yes. Yeah, there may not be anything more to say, Dan. You were interacting with the applicant's architect, and I believe you were considering or requesting a lesser variance to see if that would work, but we haven't received anything from them to this point.
Right, he said that he could make it work with a lesser variance, you know, because it's an odd shaped lot, it's on the corner, it's sort of pie shaped, you know, so I can see giving him, and there's no impact from the relief because it's against Downs path, but it was just a lot of relief, you know, and so I guess we're waiting to see if they'll come back and modify their relief from 20 feet to maybe 10 feet, you know?
Okay, so we're awaiting additional submissions from the applicant. And then we have case number 3093, 56 Halsey Neck Lane. This was a request for pyramid relief and front yard setback relief. Front yard setback relief 65.3 feet where 80 feet is required. And I do believe Lisa submitted revised elevations.
You move the house to the south,
We do.
so the pyramid relief would be on the flag lot driveway instead of on a house.
That's correct.
So far as the relief from the front yard, you know, they're parking cars in the front yard now, which they're allowed to do. When they have their new driveway going to the back, the cars won't be in the driveway. And I think they really need the backyard for recreation. It's a narrow lot, not going to be too wide back there. Give them the relief, 65 instead of 80.
How are we
I'm
on
fine
the
with
pyramid
that.
law relief? Dan, are you okay with the pyramid law relief?
I am now, since they shifted it to the more to the other side.
They did.
And Julia, how are you on pyramid law relief?
In terms of the pyramid law relief, I was fine. I wondered if the house could be ever so slightly, if the variance request could be just a little bit less. If given moving 2 feet made such a difference in the pyramid law, I wondered if moving it, even a foot was going to make a difference.
Yeah, I would like the applicant or Lisa to consider having a 70-foot front yard setback rather than 65.3 and make the variance request a little bit less substantial. But I'm fine with the pyramid law relief. I think when your relief is impacting only a driveway, that's a significant consideration.
That sounds fine with me, Mark.
I actually, in looking at the new plans, was there ever a time when she can, we were presented with this house that required an enormous amount of pyramid relief. And at the time, I feel like, well, what would the house be like if you just made a house that had half of the pyramid relief? Would it be possible?
What happens is it cuts your headroom off in the rooms on the second
I see
floor.
that. But how many, is that our problem, or I have misgivings?
Well, it's a condition of a really a weird lot in a
house.
weird situation, the village is full of these weird shaped lots, so to make any kind of house work, the people need the relief.
Well, the question is, I hear you, and I trust your judgment, Dan. I just feel like, I don't know. I feel like it makes me uncomfortable to think. I agree that I actually think that's what the ZBA is supposed to be for, is you get a weird situation and you try to make it work. But I felt like maybe they didn't try to make it work enough in the first place. And it just seems like the north elevation of this house just seems really a lot of roof.
To the south.
Yeah, I do think moving the house to the south was
It's a good move.
Really good move.
Right. It looks like the entrance to like a big hotel back there, that driveway to the south. I agree with that, but I'm just worried about how substantial. Was there a way not to have such a substantial pyramid request?
Narrow lot, I think it'd be very difficult.
Well, you could put a smaller house, there are ways to do things. I don't know. And also, I thought about what she said about when I guess Mark was talking about moving the house back a little, that she said the swimming pool had to go east-west and that it would divide up the lot. And I actually thought about that and looked around, and I don't actually think that holds. A swimming pool is in the ground. It doesn't divide the lot in half. My sister's got a house on Wickapog, and her swimming pool goes across the lot and it looks perfectly nice. So I don't think that's something we should agree to if we don't feel that that's if that's the reason why she can't move the house back. That doesn't work for me.
Dan, looking at the survey, do you think it could run north-south, the pool, and thereby?
Well, I think what happens if you want it that way, that you're going to crowd the driveway. I think it fits better the way they have it. And if you move the house back 5 feet, they can make the pool 5 feet smaller. They don't, it's.
Well, that's a good point.
I do have a Brett Rothamel here. I don't know if I was typing before, so I apologize, but I'm not sure when his hand came up, if he's for this application or just raised it right for the last one.
What was the name?
Brett Rothamel?
I think he's involved in this case.
Have we ever heard of him from any case?
Oh, he's Flying Point, I think.
I apologize. I was looking at the screen typing and I missed his hand.
You were past that.
Well, we have the public meeting next Thursday, so he can speak at that time. I believe you can send them, if you can send them a note, I'm pretty sure that's Flying Point.
Okay, and then, never mind, the hand went back down.
Okay, and if, in regard to Flying Point, I heard from Rob Fischetti, their attorney, just moments ago. He said that apparently the architect did submit revised plans, but it wasn't until Monday. So that's why we don't have anything in our packets to review and discuss.
Okay, and he just raised his hand as well.
Okay, so we'll that's in time for the public meeting, and we'll address it then.
Be able to look at the new plans before then.
So we can go to Village Hall and pick up a set now.
Yes.
Okay, are we, can we move on to case number 3094, 980 Meadow Lane?
Sure.
Chick, do you have anything you'd like to say about 980 Meadow Lane, case number 3094?
Sure. Thank you, Mark. This project was substantially, actually completely consistent with the setback requirements with respect to structures, sanitary and landscaping. There is an extensive existing driveway on the east part of this property, and we're proposing to reduce the driveway surface area and come in with kind of a Y configuration. So at the last meeting, the only comments that I had recorded were a request by myself to look at the driveway, see if the area could be reduced within 125 feet of the wetlands. Consider moving the driveway a little bit to the west to set back more from an existing wetland south of Meadow Lane. Specify the surface material for the driveway. I think that was all. We did receive a resubmission on December 2nd. It's an extensive package, but I'm going to display one diagram that I thought was especially helpful, which you can see here. The yellow dashed line was the prior driveway configuration. The white dashed line is the existing driveway. And the new gray area in the green lines is the proposed reconfiguration of the driveway. I believe this achieves what I was looking for. They've basically moved the Y a little bit further south, and they've kind of departed from the 125-foot setback in a way that reduces the driveway surface area. The driveway has also been moved to the west, not much. But again, this is the existing driveway surface that's on the property. So I would specify that it needs to be a pervious driveway. And other than that, I believe this is responsive to what I was looking for. And there is a full package that was submitted.
Okay, so we'll hear from the applicant at the public meeting, but it seems like it's moving in the right direction.
I would agree.
Good.
Yes.
So let's just go through some of the new cases just to see if there's some questions that board members may have, and perhaps we could expedite some of these cases by having the applicants submit additional materials between now and the public meeting. I think the first new case is case number 3097. 4 Fountains, 660 Halsey Neck Lane.
I have 3095, Alexander Wolf.
3095.
Oh yeah, that is my, okay, we can do whichever. My printout says the 3097 is the first, but we can go in whatever order you want. Let's do 3095, Alexander Wolf, 35 Cooper Street.
Okay.
I mean, it seems like a modest request to me. Is there anything that the applicant should submit between now and the public meeting that would be helpful?
I think we just got to hear it.
Okay. It just seems like dormers on a block where most of the other houses, also have dormers.
I went over there. It's a small little smushed house. I get it. He could use some relief.
Yeah,
And
I
that
agree
neighborhood has
too.
had a lot of houses built bigger, unfortunately, but he doesn't need to be the last man standing. He's not asking for a huge amount.
Okay, so we'll hear it at the public meeting and go on to Four Fountains, case number 3097.
Happened 3096.
Same here.
That's interesting.
So do you
Oh,
all
great.
not have Four Fountains on your agenda?
No, we do, but it's 3097
out
and
of
we had
order.
95 and 96 in front of it.
Oh, I got it.
Okay, so it's all the way down, it's number 3 on your agenda.
Yeah.
Correct.
Interesting. Okay. I'll
Who's
move
that
it
friend
down.
with David? David, who's your friend?
This is my daughter, Emma.
Hi, Emma.
Hi, Emma.
He's very interested. That's nice.
What are we doing?
We're doing
3096.
85 Hildreth Street.
85 Hildreth Street.
It is, wow, a great deal of relief. 2 sheds, 6 feet where 10 feet is required.
There's no backyard here at all.
Right.
It's and there's a letter for the neighbor that wrote a letter, and it's really going to impact that neighbor.
I actually felt sorry for the neighbor, and I think this is a greedy application if there ever was one. I don't agree with the pool thing. I don't agree with any of it.
Yeah, me either.
Are there any additional materials that they can submit?
Well, the other thing is they want to bump the garage out towards the street, and I don't know if that would just make it like there's no parking. You have one space in the garage, and that would be it.
Well, the neighbor mentioned that. That's a good point.
I have a letter from the neighbor.
The letter is all about the parking, the noise from the swimming pool. And it's true that like in a neighborhood where there's such a small setback already, to ask for like 1/5 less, it's not acceptable. I thought the parking, I never would have thought of that, was really a salient point. Those streets are tight.
So far as the pool, we usually don't give relief for pools. Pool is not a necessary.
They can have a pool, it just can't be as big as they want.
They have to reduce it so they can meet the 20 feet.
The letter in objection from the neighbor was emailed in today.
Right,
it
so I
wasn't
guess
in the
we should
packet.
pretend we didn't read it.
I didn't get it, no.
It's a good letter.
I agree, Dan.
Okay, so we'll hear it at the public meeting next Thursday. And
They have to-
now are we on to case number 3097, Four Fountains?
Yep.
You are.
Okay, I don't know.
Here we
where-
go.
So anyway, this is also the first case, David, so maybe you can weigh in. This is the first case where there's a question about locating a tennis court in the front yard. I know that 980 Meadow Lane, under the new law, placed the pool in the front yard, but did not request any relief. In this case, we do have that before us, and it's new law allowing some accessory structures in the front yard. So that's one issue here. I would say when I looked at this, I was a little bit surprised at the aggressiveness of the development project. Not only are they requesting a tennis court in the traditional front yard, but at the same time, they're requesting a pool in the traditional backyard within the wetland setbacks. If there was any purpose to granting relief from the accessory structures in a front yard, I believe that the trade-off was supposed to be eliminating accessory structures closest to wetlands or waterfront setbacks. This application actually asks for both, and to me seems to disregard the intended purpose of the new law. So it's not a particularly sympathetic case for the new law allowing relief from the front yard setback. In addition, when I looked at this application and the applicant, responded quickly, I was concerned that the applicant had plenty of building envelope to work with. And it turns out from their recent submission, they do. They have an acre in which to site a residence and whatever accessory structures they want, a full acre. And yet this application still calls for relief from wetlands. So I'm just a little bit surprised that the applicant would request wetland setback relief when it seems unnecessary. But Chick, do you want to weigh in a little bit after you've had a chance to look at this?
If I can,
Go ahead,
Chick,
David.
can I weigh in first before you? Sorry.
Absolutely.
In this regard, they're asking for a determination from this board that's not this board's purview. The determination of whether or not this is a waterfront lot is a determination that needs to be obtained from the building inspector. And if he either agrees with the applicant or disagrees, that needs to be what they're applying from, is either to review his decision or because he agreed with them and they're using that provision of the code. But from my understanding, there is no determination from the building inspector one way or the other on this, and it's his call as to whether or not the code reviews this property as waterfront or not. So they do need, legally speaking, before this board can get to the rest of it, whether or not this is a waterfront lot under the code.
Do you think it's a waterfront lot under the code, David?
That's not my call. I don't believe the inspector does. I don't believe that Chris feels this is a waterfront lot, but that's going to be his determination to make.
I was appalled by this and also by the law, which is vague.
But they'll need to obtain a determination from Chris Talbot as to whether or not this is waterfront lot or not.
So who tells them that? Or do we tell them that in the meeting?
Somebody else is going to tell
I
them.
can advise their counsel.
But then are we saying, David, and just to save the board's time, perhaps this application is not ready for us?
I don't believe it is until they have that determination from Chris.
Well, then what timing should we take this off next Thursday's agenda?
Chris may be able to provide us a determination in that time.
Does Chris have any legal person he talks to when he makes these kind of determinations?
I believe he speaks with the village attorney, but he's the arbiter of the code.
What happens if he doesn't talk to the attorney, just decides
And it's
himself?
his decision.
Okay,
It's his decision if he wants to speak to me or to Brian Egan or anyone, but it's his ultimate decision.
Okay, so can we say that if we do not have it, does that decision need to be in writing from the building inspector?
I would want it in
absolutely.
writing.
Okay, so if he does not have it in writing by the date of our submissions, which is next Tuesday at 12, then let's just, if it's not in there by next Tuesday, then we'll just be holding this application off and not hearing it at the public meeting next Thursday.
Okay, we're good.
Dick, do you want to say anything about the application? Is there something that the applicant should do between now and next Thursday that would be helpful to them?
Well, we have a very thick package, I will say. They submitted a lot of material. I would say that, we've reviewed a lot of cases that have existing development, but most of the ones that I've seen have been on lots that are more heavily constrained, where we're just looking to make things better. In this case, there is a pool within the existing setback areas and some driveways, but I do see quite a lot of structure within the 150-foot setback on the application, as well as a pool. I will also point out that we just approved 359 Meadow Lane to the east that has a very nice large buffer area to the north of that house that would provide a nice contiguous open space to the pond to the east. And I would really look to maximize buffers here to try and remove structure from within the structure setback and to provide a better landscape setback at the 125-foot mark. And as you observed, Mark, there's quite a bit of area to do it. Based on preliminary review and a conversation I had with Mark last week, I did request that the applicant submit the plan that you received today. It's really just for informational purposes, and it highlights the buffer area in consideration of the wetland setbacks as well as zoning setbacks. And the blue highlighted area shows the buildable area that's available. So I would agree with the chairman's remarks. We have not heard this case yet, but when we do, I would certainly look and challenge the applicant to get more of the structure out of the setback areas.
I would say, Chick, if you could also take a look, most of the removal of structure in the current setback relief is a driveway, which is, I mean, the case to the south, I think was, I guess significantly different from this application in that respect.
Yeah, they were boxed in on all sides. This is much different.
Okay, so I think that's it, unless anybody has anything that they need to discuss or talk about.
I just say again that I would very much appreciate if we could return to the agendas that identify the specific variance requests that individual applicants are looking for, that the summary of it makes it so that we have to do kind of a lot of work to figure out everything that they are looking for. And I tend to over review it to understand it.
Well, that we have passed that request along now to Jackie, and the going forward, I believe probably not until I don't know if she's going to be able to get revised ones out for the public hearing, but
Yeah.
The agendas going forward would have the relief that's requested that's put on the public notice.
Okay.
So the notices that you receive that includes that information, that information will now be kept on the agenda. So for applications that are pending and ongoing, it's not a guessing game as to what the relief requested was.
Thank you, because I'm finding myself going to the paper to find out before I start reviewing the materials.
I also would like to ask David, I was up in the middle of the night and what should be on channel 22 but our last meeting. And at one point, one of the lawyers I thought was mean. He addressed ad hominem insults to members of the board. And I wonder what your advice is for, I don't really want to be part of a meeting where that kind of behavior is condoned. Is there anything that the chairman or any of us can do?
You mean condoned?
I mean, that it goes on.
Right.
How do we stop it?
That's up to the board, to you guys to tell the applicant or counsel that the way they're proceeding is not acceptable to the board. It's not my meeting to run, it's the board's meeting. If you feel that it's going off the rails or is getting it, then that needs to be said by the board.
Yeah, the off the rails is when an advocate for an applicant, I guess, makes what most people would regard as personal remarks about individual board members. I think that's my definition of off the rails. And we'll just highlight it when it arises and see if we can't steer it, back onto the rails.
I will say also, I think raised voices is not acceptable. And I recognize that we're in constrained conditions by being on Zoom, but the volume at which some of the presentations are being made is not acceptable to me. And as you all know, I have made those statements now for multiple times.
Also,
it's unprofessional.
when someone is repeating, is there a way, when someone just gets up, a lawyer, and just repeats the same thing that was said 3 times before, is there any way to deal with that, David?
Again, the same with the board has to take the position, say, look, we've heard this, we've from you before, from other applicants, we're comfortable with this material. If there's something new, please move on to that. We don't need to rehear arguments from prior meetings and whatnot.
But then
Mark can address the applicant and let them know that we've heard this before, and that we don't, he can let them know that we don't want to hear repeated arguments.
Right.
So when I was the chair of the ARB, I would say, do you have anything new to tell us this evening about your application? But then they wouldn't. They would just launch into the old repetitious thing, and then it would take even longer.
We've already heard that stuff. We don't need to hear it again.
Yes, but how do we politely get? That's what I'm asking. But I hear what David.
Well, that was the way Kevin put it was very polite.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you don't have to be totally polite sometimes.
No, I don't think that's my problem. And
no, frankly, I think tonight's meeting went very well with the limiting or the having less non-participants coming in and speaking again. I feel like next week's meeting we won't be hearing so much of the same thing again, speaking to what Dan's opening comments.
It's nice to keep those people out of the information channels we have.
And I'm sorry, did you guys discuss 3098?
No, we didn't.
I don't know.
And there was one more.
Oh, 10 Center Street. Yes, we missed 10 Center Street. That's a pool. It's a pool setback variance. Just one variance, right?
Yeah. They want to make their existing pool smaller.
This is a whole. What's not clear from the application is I believe they're cleaning the entire site, and this is a complete rebuild. I think.
Yeah.
And what their argument is that they already have a variance for the existing pool, but like we said in a few of our cases previously, once you're cleaning the slate, we need to look
start again
and determine whether or not you could comply with the setback. And that's what their materials, thanks David, by the way, for bringing this one up. Their materials don't show that. They don't show whether the variance is necessary. They just say that since we have it now, we're going to preserve it as if, it continues even though we're building a brand new house and a brand new swimming pool. And I don't think the board has that viewpoint at all. I think that when you're scraping everything that currently exists on a certain property, you have to show why you need the variance, not that you have something similar now and you're just not, changing it.
Right.
Is that true? Is that true, David? If somebody gets a variance, isn't a variance for the life of the property? Unless we put a condition on it?
Well, yes, if they don't change things. And this is a case where they're taking up the existing pool entirely. They're taking up the whole house. They're changing the whole house and the configuration. So the reasons for the prior variance may or may not exist now. In other words, they might have been granted the variance before because it was behind the house. We don't know what.
Right, yeah. If they change direction on the house.
Your prior variance approval approved a survey or a site plan or something, which would be for that location of that pool, given the existing constraints of the lot at that time. It's
Do you
similar.
even have a copy of, people say lots of things. Did they present a copy of
We
their,
do not have a copy of the prior variance.
that might be helpful too.
Be very helpful.
Yeah, I think we need the prior variance and the prior survey compared to the proposed survey. I thought the materials were missing some important documentation. And if they had that for our public hearing, it would expedite matters.
Right, we do have, I think they do submit two separate surveys, one of the proposed, one of the existing.
Yes.
Okay, so they show the pool in its current location.
On one survey, they show all of the existing improvements. And then on the separate survey, they have all of the proposed improvements without any of the existing improvements shown.
Right. And on that proposed, do they show how far the pool is from the street?
15
The
aside.
measurement is not on there.
How convenient.
The house is 40 feet. The pool looks to be at least another 5 to 10 feet beyond that. So it's probably somewhere in the 50-foot area would be my best guess.
So why can't they slide the pool 5 feet closer to the road?
They could. There's room to do it.
Well,
And
there you
what's
have
the
your
street-
answer.
What's the street setback on this? I don't know what that is off the top of my head.
If they slid it 4 feet, they'd still be in the side yard. They wouldn't get past, if it's a corner lot, they wouldn't get past the front of the house. And they're changing the direction of the house. The front of the house now faces Center Street. The new house is going to face Corrigan Street.
So does that change which is the front yard? Oh, it's a corner lot?
No, but Dan has the question that I had was exactly that, Dan. Why can't they just slide the pool closer to Center
From
Street?
what I can see on the survey, there is no reason why they can't slide this pool 5 feet and still, and it would comply.
Well, that would be great.
Variance.
And I agree with you. The pool is in a completely new location from the other variants. So I don't think it's that setback is applicable in this new location. The original variance. The original variance was a pool behind the house when the house faced Center Street. Now this is a pool behind the house that's facing Corrigan Street.
Well, that certainly changes it. You're right.
So if you're just looking at this, does it look like they could just put the pool 5 feet closer to?
It does to Center Street. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't. There's enough room.
Yeah, it's at least this isn't spelled out. I mean, they don't. David, what's the front yard setback for an accessory structure?
It's, I believe this lot would be based on the R20 zone that it's in, which would be 50 feet.
So
They have the front of this house. It's now going to be the side of the house is 40 feet from Center Street. Are you sure it's 50 feet and not 40 feet?
The principal structure setback is 40 feet in the R20 zone. The accessory structure setback is 50 feet in the R20. So
okay, so
that
they would need relief from the street rather than from the side yard neighbor, because if they slide the pool, well, they don't have the measurement. If they put the measurement, they could also make the pool a few feet
So it's an incomplete application.
Yeah. And they can make the pool a little bit smaller and it would fit.
There you go.
yeah, you're right. They don't have that measurement from Center Street. That was my recollection. So the applicant needs to show that and needs to justify the need for the variance.
I think you should impress them. But they need to put the dimensions down. We're not here to get out of one of those things with
Gail,
measure things. It's ridiculous. I honestly think there's a reason why it's not on there, but that's me.
And I mean, Dan, to Dan's point, yes, it may show us that they can make the pool a little bit smaller and comply with the setback. But okay, we'll hear them next Thursday, but hopefully they can come in with a survey that shows their dimensions.
Yes, by Tuesday at noon.
Are we all set? Is there anything else we need to discuss?
I just had a quick question, if we could confirm the dates of the January meetings?
January.
I don't think we have those.
We got an email with a list of the dates of all the meetings.
Oh, Kat put that. Hang on.
I thought we were back on schedule for January.
Here we are. I think the meeting is the 28th, and the work session is 9 days before that, 17th.
The 19th.
Wait,
It would be the 19th.
yeah,
Yeah, the 19th, I'm sorry, the 19th and the 28th. But it starts on a Friday, therefore Thursday would be the 28th. What Thursday?
January 12th.
What?
no,
No,
we're saying the 18th.
19th
19th,
and
19th.
This is from
Forgive me.
Kat.
28th.
Oh, wait.
19th and 28th.
Okay, so the work session is January 19th and the public meeting is January 28th,
Correct.
2021.
All right.
We all set? We'll see each other next Thursday night.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, good night.
Done.
Good night, thanks all.
All right.